The year was 1878, and Lone Mesa sat still under a sky too big for kindness. The no-rain time had burned the land empty, and being poor had made people mean. In a bent bar at the edge of town, a shaken woman stood in front of people she didn't know. Lillian, 21, thin from hunger, her good looks made dim by hard times. Her father's money problems had caught up with him, and the card players took what he had left, his daughter. $500, the seller shouted, sweat shining under his hat brim. For the girl, one night, one lifetime, however long a man can deal with her. The crowd laughed quietly. Then a voice broke through the smoke and laughter. I'll buy her. The bar went silent. A tall man walked out from the back, wide shoulders, dark coat, hat low over his eyes. He put down 5 gold coins on the counter without blinking. The whispers followed him. That's Adam Riley, the quiet cowboy. Doesn't talk more than he needs to. Lost his wife 3 winters ago. Adam turned to Lillian, his look steady. You couldn't tell what he was thinking. Come, he said simply. Lillian followed him out into the night, her heart beating fast with fear and shame. She had expected being treated badly, rough hands, orders, a cage instead of being free. Instead, Adam lifted her onto his horse with care, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. They rode through the moonlit desert without a word, wind talking softly through dry sage. By the time they got to his ranch, a single house standing against the stars, her fear had changed. It was no longer fear of hurt. It was fear of not knowing what kind of man would buy a woman and not want to touch her hand. Days went by like slow rain. Lillian worked softly, fixing clothes, cleaning the small house, feeding the horses. Adam spoke little, though his silence carried no evil. When she'd look up from her jobs, she'd find him watching from far away, looking, not scaring. One evening, as she brought food to the table, she dared to speak. Why did you buy me? Adam didn't look up from his plate. To keep you from worse things. She stared at him. You could have left me there. He nodded. I could have. The words stayed in the quiet air like smoke. She didn't ask more. But in the next days, she learned the way of his life, the way he woke up before sunup, the way he looked after his horses like family, the way he'd stand outside at night, staring at the graves on the hill. One bore the name Hannah Riley, his wife, gone because of fever. When Lillian brought fresh flowers to the grave one morning, Adam found her there. You don't need to do that, he said softly. I know, she replied, but someone should. He looked at her for a long time then, the edges of his silence getting softer. You've got a kind heart, he said softly. She met his eyes, and you've got a quiet one. A small smile showed on his lips, and she knew for the first time that the man behind that silence wasn't cruel, just tired. But talk traveled fast. When word got to town that the quiet cowboy had bought himself a wife and still hadn't used her, tongues moved with jokes. He's lost his power. A man like that ain't a man at all. One night, Lillian heard 2 riders near the fence line laughing about it. She squeezed her hands tight, shame making her cheeks hot. That night, as rain hit the windows, she finally asked, Why don't you? Why don't you want me? Adam looked at her, his jaw tight, eyes full of quiet storms. Because I didn't buy you to own you, he said. I bought you to give you a chance to start over. Spring came slowly over Lone Mesa, like saying sorry. The desert had flowers, and Lillian began to smile again. Slowly at first, then easily. She planted flowers by the porch, baked bread, and filled the silence of the house with singing sounds. Adam, though still quiet, began to stay longer at the table, watching her laugh, his eyes kinder than she'd ever seen them. One afternoon, he came in from the fields with a cut across his hand. Without thinking, she reached for it. You'll get it sick if you don't wash it, she scolded gently. He froze as her fingers touched his skin, rough meeting soft. For a moment, neither moved. Then she said softly, You don't have to be alone forever, Adam. He swallowed hard, voice low. "And you don't have to pay me back anything." She smiled faintly. "Maybe I want to." That night, the air outside smelled of rain. Thunder sounded far off. Adam stood by the window, thinking hard. Lillian watched him from the bed, heart pounding, afraid of her own bravery. "Adam," she whispered. He turned, eyes asking a question. "I'm not afraid of you," she said softly. "You can be gentle with me. I trust you." For a long moment he just looked at her, truly looked, and then something inside him let go. But instead of crossing the room, he sat down beside her and said quietly, "You don't get it, Lillian. You were sold once. I won't let it feel that way ever again." Her eyes filled with tears. No man had ever talked to her like that, not with pity, with respect. And in that moment she cried, not from fear, but from the too heavy feeling of kindness. The next morning, the sun broke clear and gold over the open land. The storm had washed the dust clean, and the world smelled of new beginnings. Adam and Lillian rode into town that day. People stopped and looked when they went into the church, the silence deep enough to hear the wind outside. The preacher blinked in surprise. "You two are already married, aren't you?" Adam shook his head. "Not yet, not the right way." And there, with hands shaking but hearts steady, they said their promises, not born of money trouble or given up hope, but choosing. When Adam placed the ring on Lillian's finger, she looked at him through tears and whispered, "You've already given me everything I needed." That night, when they returned to the ranch, he lit a single candle on the table. The air was calm, the stars burning low. Lillian stood by the window, the wind pulling softly at her hair. Adam came to her, lifted her hand, and kissed it gently. "You're free now, Lillian," he said. "Always have been, always will be." She touched his face, voice trembling. "And you? Are you free, Adam?" He smiled, faint and true. "I think I am now." Outside, the prairie went on endless and quiet, the moon washing their world in silver light. The graves on the hills stood still, the past finally put away. And for you watching, if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe, because kindness in a hard land like the West was rarer than gold and stronger than any gun. They stood together at the window, the candlelight flickering against their hands together. Somewhere beyond the dark hills, a coyote made noise to the night, and for once the silence between them wasn't empty. It was home.